Yay. All right. So the wisdom literature is the recorded observations of people throughout the world. I mean, Greek philosophy is their wisdom literature. Proverbs is the Bibles. We have them from Egypt. We have them from Babylon, some of which made it into our Proverbs. There's a section of Proverbs where they quote, it's about a chapter's worth of Egyptian Proverbs. Because when I was a kid, my dad would say, if a job's worth doing, it's worth doing well. And I'm sure you heard some version of that growing up. And I don't care if you're a Hindu, a Satanist, or an agnostic. Your dad told you if a job's worth doing, it's worth doing well. Because there are certain things that transcend culture. Some are culturally specific, as we're going to see in this opening section in Proverbs. But I made the claim when we closed last time that Proverbs are not promises from God. That it's not what they are. The prophets are words from God. Thus saith the Lord. Okay, man, that's different. This isn't. This is, I've looked at the world and this is my conclusion. Because a wise son gladdens his father, and a foolish son is his mother's grief. But we all know we can cite exceptions to that. There are parents that celebrate the lawlessness of their children. Go figure. But as a rule, a wise son gladdens his father, and a foolish son is his mother's grief. In fact, when you read Proverbs, if you just stick as a rule in front of it, you'll get the force of it. All right, you're here.
You can start.
Not only that, you're going to answer a question for me.
Oh, good.
Because we're stopping. Sorry. Julie, you brought the donuts? So you got their message. Good. And you're going, why are you going to your Facebook? Yeah, is that Carly in the background? It is Carly. We were having this argument. And well, Marianne thought it was Rick Roach's daughter.
Katie?
Yeah, and I said, no, I'm pretty sure that's Carly. All right, so I don't have to show it. You guys saw it?
Well, okay, that was Carly before we realized that.
She was a girl?
And so for like the first 12 years of her life, we rushed her curly hair, which is why it looks the way it did in that picture.
Ah, oh well, that's not worth it. But it is Carly. I thought it was.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll quit that. It's Stephanie and Carly and
Jordan.
Jordan. I didn't recognize, well, the girl she told hands with was a girl she met at the park and was her good friend. And then the far girl to the left, I didn't recognize the girl with the black hair.
Yeah.
But it would have been people from here. So,
Really?
well, you and
Well, it could have been like a quiz or something, so district people. I didn't assume.
no, this was her birthday party. We
Oh,
went,
was her birthday?
yeah, we went and did something somewhere. You trusted Carly with the store. And I know. You weren't there. He just dropped her off. So if you know, this is John and Harper and Heather. I've said their names 3 times now. So you people be here 20 years. I can't remember your names. I'm sorry. So remember that, so these are observations. The mindset of, we're reading Proverbs first because it sets up the whole wisdom movement and their approach to the world. And then we'll look at Job, we'll look at Ecclesiastes, we'll look at Song of Songs and some of the wisdom psalms. Because Job, remember I told you that when they made their observations, they passed them on. That's what they did, because they look at the world, make observations, and combine that with what they've been taught and reach conclusions. That is the wisdom movement. That's what you see with Plato. That's what you see with Solomon. That's just what they do. And part of the way of getting taught the wisdom of the ages is they presented things in a format that can be memorized. So like the one verse things in Proverbs, or the longer poems. The opening 9 chapters of Proverbs are actually a series of longer poems. And it's in chapter 10 that you start the one verse snippets. But Job, of course, the whole freaking thing is. Same with Song of Songs or Psalm 1 to look at some wisdom psalms. So, well, I have to say on that, I guess. I had a thought I was going with squirrel. So, the handout I gave you, Poppy, can you see that? She disappeared.
I can barely see it, but
The point is, it's
no,
showing.
I'm here. I just signed on with my iPad instead. Yes, it is showing up.
Okay. So the point of this handout is there's a vocabulary that the wisdom movement uses that will enlighten things for you. Now, the book of Proverbs itself is divided up into sections, which we talked about. And the opening verse, the Proverbs of Solomon, son of David, king of Israel. That's the title of the book, but also the first section. Because as we saw when we looked at this last time, there are sections not by Solomon. Words of the wise. These also belong to the wise. Words of Agur, and words of Lemuel. So, but some of them are Solomon's. So, once we start with the actual verses, that's where this stuff comes in. The technical terms, which, it'll help you. You look at, no, it won't, because I have no desire to learn Hebrew. I don't know why you put those stupid things there. It'll help, I promise. So let's look at the first verse. And the ESV, it's just because I got to have a default one. I'm going to change it, as soon as we start. And we'll do it. So Nikki Dillenbeck, would you read? Is it big enough, first of all, for you to read? I can make it bigger. Oh, I made it smaller. Is that all right?
Okay. Know wisdom and instruction to understand words of insight.
Okay. In fact, I should have on the first word, the Proverbs of Solomon. That's what this is. A mashal is a proverb, but all it means is a comparison. There's a book of comparisons. We're comparing to this to that, which is what Jesus' parables are. This word also gets translated parable. It just depends on what you're looking at. The kingdom of heaven is like. That sound familiar? Yeah. So those are the proverbs parables that Jesus does, which are extended metaphors. In a mashal, it's just a comparison.
So would we say that the author wrote or collected these?
Well, what's the difference? I mean, at some point, if he's internalizing it, he's massaging it, making it his own. But
he didn't put a bunch of ideas together from Egypt or wherever and just put them in a book. He wrote these based on.
Well, the Egyptian proverbs are in these sections, not attributed to Solomon, as it turns out. Okay. But Solomon is, the tradition is he wrote some. Somebody's got to write them. So he can write his. But again, who wrote? If a job's worth doing, it's worth doing well. In my head, Dad wrote it.
Right.
That's the only way I heard it. Does that make sense? And these disappear in the annals of time. All right, so the opening verse, to know wisdom and instruction to understand words of insight. Well, of course, I got it wrong. So we're going to use my handy sheet to help you. It's like to know is down here. It's this word right here. This is the noun. Dot. Everybody say dot. I want you to be able to, because you're going to hear it a lot. The big three are da'at, hokmah, and binah. Those are the big three in Proverbs. They show up gazillions of times. I don't know actually how many, but quite a few. And da'at is the word knowledge. But does anybody remember how Adam got Eve pregnant? He knew her. And Adam knew Eve and she conceived, blah, blah, blah. So it's obviously more than just know. And so experiential knowledge or even intimacy. And what we have here, it's not, you could translate that for knowledge, or you could translate it as an infinitive to know. Given the way the subsequent verses do, it's probably infinitive to know. But I want you to understand that know, you could also translate it to experience. Do you hear me? So it's not just reading the book. Have you seen the Will Rogers thing? Some men have to jump off the cliff, some men have to fall, and some have to pee on the electric fence and just find out for themselves. Okay, that's the thing we're talking about. Experiential knowledge, experiencing it gives you an intimacy with the subject that you don't have elsewhere. But what an interesting way. Why the opening sentence to know? Because that's what the book of Proverbs is for. The Proverbs of Solomon are for you, O reader, to know. So, because what he's saying is, you can jump off the cliff yourself, or you can listen to me, and I can save you much injury. Does that make sense? And it's every conversation. You've had this conversation with your kids. I don't hate you. I'm not trying to deprive you of fun, but if you'll listen to me, I could save you some harm. Does that make sense? That's what he's saying here. So to know or experience hokmah, which is wisdom. This word. Remember what so we have three words. That's the hakamim are the wise ones. Hokmah is wisdom, and hakam is a wise person. And this is what will help explain what the word means. So we'll actually jump ahead a little bit and read this. Wise man, one who applies knowledge. Look at the list of people that are described as wise in the Bible. Artificers, which would be craftsmen, sailors, professional mourners. If you're going to have a funeral, you're going to hire professional mourners. Artisans, women who spin, goldsmiths, idol makers. They're all described as hacham, where we would translate it as skilled. And what does skill mean? You're exactly right, Harper. To apply the knowledge that you have to the task at hand. So God is one thing, experience is one thing, but the ability to apply it to the situation that we're facing, that's what makes one wise. Does that make sense? So this book has been written for experience of wisdom, or to know wisdom. What an interesting way of phrasing it. And discipline. That's this word, musar. Musar, discipline, chastening, correction. It where they got instruction, frankly, I have no idea. But I often feel that when I look at translation. Where'd you get that? So this word shows up a lot in its opening 7 verses. There is a discipline, and I mean it in the sense of a football player has discipline. And we also mean in the sense of whacking your child on the butt is discipline, or getting fired is discipline. But it's also the ability to restrain yourself to operate within certain parameters, like a football player or an athlete or a musician that's disciplined. And off the bat, he goes, not to know wisdom and understanding. That actually comes at the end. But those are the big 3, which is what you'd kind of expect. So this musar, this discipline showing up here is almost intrusive. You go, okay, that's startling. He's wanting you to pay attention. It's not enough to be smart. It's not enough to be wise. You have to be disciplined. And so I wrote this book to help you acquire that character trait. That makes sense? So the Proverbs of Solomon, for the experience of wisdom and discipline, and then this word and this word are related. He says to understand words of insight. Let me go to my list for you. This is this word, bina. Bina. It's related to the word between. My Mountain Dew between the remote and my glasses. Okay. And the idea is with bina is to tell the difference between. It's between. And to be able to break things down to its components and see how they work together. A mechanic who can disassemble. My best friend growing up, his father owned a Pontiac dealership. And he goes, okay, now I'll get a car. Well, the car he got is he had to put it together. Literally. So he had to take over a shop in the back and put together his car. Well, that gave him an understanding of his car that most people are not going to have. And that's what I mean by bina, this understanding. It's also used for discernment because you're, well, this isn't that. You know, it's this. And it's a key component in Israel's wisdom. So experience, ability to apply it, and the ability to discern or to understand. So the big 3. And then the discipline to navigate all those. So, yes. So it's to understand sayings of understanding. So he's doing you're going to understand the sayings of understanding. Okay. He's driving it home. This matters. Don't play with it. And Imre, it's just sayings, which I did not have up there. Okay, so because it's not that big of a deal. So that's just verse 1. That's why I wrote this book. Cool. I also wrote it for you to take discipline of prudence. Well, there's that word discipline, where in the second verse, we've already had a repetition. This is that word musar again. So if you get the idea that this word matters, that's because it does. So to take or to acquire the discipline of, and then this is the word sekel. In later Hebrew, this is going to be the word for wisdom. They're going to go away from Hokmah and go to this, but it's prudence. Knowing when to act. You know, you're a paratrooper. Well, you jump too early, you jump too late, you're not doing your job. You got to jump at the right time. And by the way, to jump at the right time requires musar, discipline. Because when he says go, you got to go. You can't be hesitating at the door if you're going to hit the target. And sekel is this prudence. And I'm sorry, every time I read this word, I think of the first George Bush. That wouldn't be prudent. You recognize that? Okay, thank you. Matt's just going, what? Well, Saturday Night Live is what I was thinking of. Dana Carvey used to do his George Bush. He goes, I wouldn't be prudent. You don't know who Dana Carvey is either, do you? I gotta take a swig.
No, do that.
All right. So for to acquire, it's the verb to take. I wrote the book for you to take or to acquire the discipline of prudence. So prudence has an inherent discipline character to it. Okay. And then three words that are normally associated with the prophets, or two of them anyway, not the wisdom movement: righteousness, justice, and fairness, or equity, which is not a bad translation, but treating everybody alike. Well, righteousness, we've talked about this when we read, when we did Romans. How did I translate righteousness? Does anybody remember? Yes, it's linked in. That's fantastic. So it got cumbersome, but Tzedek is being, remember, it's adherence to a standard. And so it just depends on what the conversation is. If we're talking about the law of the land, then you're legal. If you're compliant with the community standards, you're right. If you're compliant with God's directives, you're in covenant compliance. You're righteous. Big word in the prophets, but they usually do righteousness, justice, and I can't remember the other one. Chesed, covenant loyalty. This one they threw in a word, but so righteousness, not what you normally associate with the wisdom movement. And here, this is when we deviate from what a Hindu or an Egyptian could write, and only something an Israeli would write, an Israelite. This is wisdom of an Israelite nature. Does that make sense? This is when wisdom movement gets its particular Yahweh focus. It's not just general deity. That should be very clear when we read Proverbs. No. If a job's worth doing, it's worth doing well, yes. But you do it in the name of the Lord, that's a whole different animal. So righteousness. So I wrote this book for you to acquire righteousness, right standing. Now what's odd here is we don't know what he means here. Is it covenant compliance? Is he talking about God's covenant? Or is he talking about that you'll be legal, that you'll be right? I mean, we just don't know. There's no context to sharpen what he means by this word here, but that you'll be in line with the standard. Hopefully the standard becomes clear later. The fact that it's tzedek and mishpat makes me think it's covenant loyalty, because it's righteousness and justice. That word yes. Oh, I don't have it here because it's a prophet word. Mishpat is from the word to judge. And it's, how did they do it? Righteous, justice, and equity. Can be translated justice, and it also be translated verdict. You got to have a context. These two together, this is probably a good rendering. Righteousness, justice. And again, not words you associate with the wisdom movement. That's what the prophets talk about. That's what God does. But the wisdom movement is going to lead you to righteousness and justice. And I find that very interesting that he says that. So, can you acquire righteousness and justice if you can't think? You don't have to be a genius. But he says, what we're going to do here is not just how to succeed. Greek philosophy is what is a good life. And they want and they defined it depending on context. So Plato had one view, Aristotle another. For the wisdom movement, we want you to get along with God. Be in line with God's standard. And this is very important. And he puts it right at the front. Justice, righteousness. And then he throws in this word, fairness. You don't encounter that word often in the Bible. How many places can you think of where it says be fair? Can't think of many, but that's it. He says, in essence, life isn't fair, but we must be. Does that make sense? Yeah, it stinks. I am not as fast as Deion Sanders. That just ain't right. But nevertheless, I've got to be fair. I can't breathe. It's not right, but I still got to be fair. Equity. So moral component. Right off the bat, there's a moral component to the wisdom movement that he wants to deal with. Verse 4, and there we get, again, and he's going over this core vocabulary. To give to the ignorant, orma, shrewdness. Let's look at this. What is this word that I just translated, ignorance, that they translate simple? Let's look at our word. It's this word right here. A petit. Can you say petit? Naive, ignorance better. I often do it as unskilled. It's not simpleton. That's why I'm avoiding simple. That sounds like special ed, and that's not what's being described. If you were in the wisdom movement, everybody in life starts off as a na'ar, young, and a petit. You don't know anything. Harper is na'ara and petit. She doesn't know anything. She's 2 or less. If you live long enough, you'll take care of the na'ar part. You'll eventually not be young. And presumably you'll get some experience along the way. The petit takes intentional acts to overcome. You have to get trained. You have to get educated. Does this make sense? So it's not that you're naive. That's more of this word. Young. And I still get offended every time they get up and walk out like that.
You rather fall asleep?
Hit him, Renee. Good grief. So going back to the verse, to give to the ignorant, orma. And you're going, orma, God, can't you just speak? It's right here. Orma is shrewdness. It actually rhymes with the word for naked. It's the ability to see things as they are. Okay. And so he wants to give to the ignorant shrewdness, and to the na'ar, the young, da'at, young, inexperienced, experience. I don't know what that is. And mizima, purpose. Do I have mizima down here? I don't think I do. But look what he says there. So I wrote this book so that the ignorant can get some shrewdness, and that the inexperienced can get some experience. Again, you can jump off the cliff or you can listen to me. Your choice. And then this last word is interesting. I don't know if you remember being in college, but how many times did you stay up talking to your friends? Well, what are you going to do? I don't know. What's it all about? Why are we doing this? And what you look for is purpose. And that's what this word is. Knowledge and discretion, no. It's to give knowledge and purpose. And this I do surely have mizima down here. Apparently not. But it means purpose. Because when you're 22 or when you're 18, you don't know what purpose you have in life. And you're trying to find it. And when you're when you're young, you don't have experience and you don't have purpose. So I wrote this so that you could discover your purpose. That's what he's saying. Huh. Things that make you go, huh. Then we'll add here, verse 5, a hacham, a wise man. I swear, I'm not wise. I can't do this. All right. A wise man will hear, and he will add lekach. This word right here. Lekach is the verb to take. And it's translated to education. And I used to have so much fun with this when we go over in class. So, if education is taking, whose responsibility is it? The teacher or the student? The student. Yay, a little binah has enlightened you. Yes, it's something you take. And it's a big deal. The wise person, you're already a wise person. They'll read this book, they will hear, and they will add education. So yes, I wrote it for the Petit and the Na'ar, but I also wrote it for the Chacham, the wise person, because everybody can get something from this. I mean, I think Solomon wrote this part. And he's saying, look, dude, I know you're smart and but you can learn. And the Navon, which is the guy that has Binah. So we've had 3 different words from this one root. The understanding one will acquire plans. This is the word for plans. They translated guidance, but you can see that word, plans. You'll get plans. This is how you can get from here to there. You're going to have that you understand, and now you can set up plans for this. So the book, it's not just for the young and the ignorant. It's also for the wise and the smart, if you want another word, or the understanding. And you will actually purchase, is what it says. The understanding one will purchase plans. And then I'm going through verse 6 for a reason, because it sets up verse 7 for next week. And the purpose of this book is there's that word again, to understand a proverb. Oh, he's going to go through the different types of sayings. The wisdom movements of the world have couched their observations in literary forms. And I'm going to teach you how to read these literary forms. So you can understand a proverb, a mashal, a militzah, which I do give you up here, a satire, a mocking poem, the words of the wise, and their riddles. There's the word for riddle, and there's the word for wise. So, because my book doesn't have it all, I want you to be able to read other wisdom books and understand their literary forms and glean from them. Does that make sense? And you go, oh, okay. So Solomon's a pretty kind of open-minded guy, but he does have a definite view of how things work. And this definite view of going through Yahweh, going through the Lord, it's going to be very clear. That's the book unfolds. Now, I'm stopping at verse 7, which is the summary of everything, because it's 10:15. I don't want people walking out. But he's opened up this. He's given us that whole vocabulary, and it links with this, which I will read to let you meditate on it. The fear of Yahweh is the beginning of da'at, experiential knowledge. Wisdom and discipline, fools despise. Something to meditate on. We'll stop here. Stop sharing. Yay. Any prayer requests? I'm just going to leave it there. Do I want to stop recording? I got to stop recording.